I call it the art of wonder.
Mm.
I know personally that when something creates wonder in me, when I'm in a state of wonder, I am open in a way that I'm not open in any other time in my life. And so I feel that part of what I'm doing is I'm trying to create those moments of wonder that people can enter. And then as I'm laying in all of these messages about following your dream, not giving up, having persistence, it's okay to make mistakes. I believe that those ideas, those sentiments are finding fertile ground because they're open. There is no resistance to it because we're laughing. It's a state shift, right? Like people are open in a way that they weren't when they entered that performance. So I have modeled during the arc of the show that dreams can come true.
Doom bong ba doom bong, doom bong, doom bong ba doom bong, ba da 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 dum, doom bong ba doom bong, doom bong, doom bong ba doom bong, ba da 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 dum, doom bong ba doom bong, doom bong, doom bong ba doom bong, ba da 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 dum, doom bong ba doom bong, doom bong, doom bong ba doom bong. Hey everyone, Ross Taylor here, and I am stepping in as your host for this episode of the Sacred Village podcast. Mark is away at ceremony, so I've been invited to guide today's conversation and also to share something very exciting. Starting this Sunday, August 17th, we'll be launching a new series within the Sacred Village podcast called Sacred Sundays. I'll be hosting these special episodes where we will explore the question, what does the sacred mean to you? Each week, I'll be having conversations with guests who will share how they relate to the sacred in their own lives. They will share their stories, their practices, and the unique gifts they bring to the world. If you're someone who's drawn to depth, meaning, and human connection, I think you'll love what's coming. I'm excited to share the first episode with you this coming Sunday. Until then, let's drop into today's conversation. Today I'll be talking with Geoff Akins. Geoff is an author, speaker, mystic, and has been entertaining, educating, and empowering children and adults alike worldwide for over 30 years with his gentle spirit and sense of humor. Inspired by his life-altering experiences as a teacher in special education, he created the Bubble Wonders show to convey the message that anything is possible. Whether it's a school assembly for children or presenting keynotes for adults, Geoff demonstrates how persistence and a positive attitude helps make dreams come true. Geoff's clients include Facebook, Harley-Davidson, Toyota, and Google. He's been featured on CBS Sunday Morning and co-authored the bestseller Wake Up and Live the Life You Love. I first met Geoff after moving to the Okanagan in 2021. We both attended the same men's circle over the course of 4 years. I really enjoyed getting to know Geoff during that time, and luckily I was able to experience a Bubble Wonders show before moving to Vancouver Island in March of this year. I'm honored to welcome Geoff Akins, also known as the Bubble Man, to the Sacred Village podcast. Welcome, Geoff.
Thanks for having me, Ross. This is a delight.
So happy to have you here. Would you like to start by talking about the Bubble Wonders show and how that came to be?
Sure. So, Bubble Wonders, I call it inspirational entertainment. The theme of Bubble Wonders is anything is possible. So, the running gag throughout the show is I try to prove that that's true by making my dream come true, which is to create a square bubble. And what I do is intentionally fail along the way to model lessons about having persistence and not giving up and thinking outside the box and things like that. And it's a show full of these really beautiful and captivating bubble tricks, connecting bubbles together, putting people inside of bubbles, etc., woven together with this sort of positive message and inspirational asides about following one's dream. And by the end, we do. We actually figure out a way to make a square bubble.
Amazing. I had the pleasure of actually getting to see your show before I left the Okanagan, and it was quite magical. I really felt my inner child wake up to the experience.
Oh, I love that. I was just recently talking to an audience member, and She said basically a version of what you've just said, that it brought her inner child out. And my thought is the kids already kind of live in that realm. That's their habitual place. That's where they just naturally are. And so I'm always particularly delighted when adults can re-enter that space again.
And what is it that you notice in that regard in terms of the way that adults show up? And I mean, I know that in my own work, I see a lot of loss of that innocence and joy and wonder in our lives. Do you see that waking up in adults as they attend your shows?
For sure. I mean, just last week I had two back-to-back shows at different libraries here in the Okanagan. In both of those, uh, the show is kind of nebulous. Like I have a thread, I know where I'm going to start, I know where I'm going to end, I know my tricks, but then I'm also reading the room. It sounds weird, but since the tricks I've done them for so long now that that's second nature. I can do that almost on autopilot. And so a lot of my awareness is just kind of focused outward towards the audience, and the show kind of goes where it's supposed to go, depending on how people are reacting, depending on who's reacting and who volunteers. Because I get adults up at some point during the show. And in both of these cases, there's a little invitation that I do. And in both cases, adults came up and I put them
Mm-hmm.
inside a bubble. And both of them were just so delighted. You could just see it on their faces. And in both cases, after the show was over, both of those people in these two separate shows came up and just gave me the biggest hug, thanked me for that experience. So to me, that says a lot. It means that something is really resonating. It woke something up, or
Mm-hmm.
they remembered or something like that. I mean, the fact that they were so touched by it that they came up and made a point of like thanking me with a hug. I mean, that's special.
And if you were to make up a story about what they experienced, what exactly do you think might have woken up?
It's interesting. One of the women at one of these two examples that I'm talking about, she was so present and so grateful that we've connected. So I will actually ask her that because I think that would be really cool to have somebody's firsthand knowledge, right? Like there's what I think, and then there's what they're experiencing based on their life experience, right? The example, and I don't know if I did exactly like this when you saw the show, but at some point near the end of the show, I've brought some volunteers up, some kids, and I've put them inside of bubbles in a couple different ways. And then I kind of feign like I'm going to go off now onto some other part of the show, do something else. And then I joke and I say, I sense a disturbance in the bubble force. I sense that somewhere in this room there's a grown up, an adult that was just thinking inside, I wish I could be in a bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And it always gets a response from the audience, right? The adults get a kick out of it. And inevitably, it lands because somebody was actually thinking something along those lines. So I think the laughter part of it is recognition, and part of it, like, oh my God, how did he know?
Mm-hmm.
And then I say, well, where are you? I can sense it, but I can't quite pinpoint it. And I've learned over time to just not move on, just let that hang in the air for a moment. And then finally, someone will raise their hand. And, I know we're now in August, but when I was doing this back in June, I talked about Mental Health Month for
Mm-hmm.
men. And so I love it, especially when I get guys that will come up and volunteer to be inside a bubble. And so for the last few years, I've added this part about praising. It kind of goes back to the men's group, as you were talking about king, warrior, magician, lover, and that final king round being about praise and witnessing, right? And so when I get these adult volunteers up, before I even put them inside a bubble, I ask their name and then I say, I praise you for you felt it, right? Like may you never lose that. I hope you stay in touch with that innocence, that inner child you have. And second, I praise you because you admitted it, like you raised your hand and quite quickly sometimes. And I just added this last show, and I tend to gauge people's mental health by how quickly they raise their hand.
Right.
And then finally, I praise you because you took action. You actually left the comfort of your chair there in the back of the audience to come up here and stand in front of all these strangers to be, inside a bubble. And then after I put them in a bubble, first guaranteeing that somebody is there that can take a video or a picture of it so they have memory of it, they have a record of it. I also give them some little token or memento, in some cases, some sort of bubble toy just to kind of cement that experience, right? Like here's this tangible thing that you can take away to remember this experience by. And that whole experience, the laughter, the getting up in front of everybody, being praised, having the experience of being inside the bubble, having people applaud you, receiving some sort of thank you gift, like all those things. My intention, of course, is to really just give that moment as much power and beauty as I can, hoping that it lands and that it sticks and that that person carries that forward in some fashion.
You mentioned the idea of inspirational entertainment. And so to that last point you shared, that's what you're speaking to is the hope that you've inspired something in that person that carries on.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, the running gag is trying to make the square bubble, and I do. By the
Yeah,
end, I do make a square bubble, and that surprises people. Like I've had grown-ups come up and say, "I thought you were just pulling my leg. I didn't know you were actually going to do it." So that's
right.
another version of that wonder that comes out. Like, oh my, like you hear it. I mean, I literally hear it. In some
Hmm.
cases, feel it, that shift, like just that intake of breath and the, oh my God, or the what? Those are those moments. I call it the art of wonder.
Mm.
I know personally that when something creates wonder in me, when I'm in a state of wonder, I am open in a way that I'm not open in any other time in my life. And so I feel that part of what I'm doing is I'm trying to create those moments of wonder that people can enter. And then as I'm laying in all of these messages about following your dream, not giving up, having persistence, it's okay to make mistakes. I believe that those ideas, those sentiments are finding fertile ground because they're open. There is no resistance to it because we're laughing. It's a state shift, right? Like people are open in a way that they weren't when they entered that performance. So I have modeled during the arc of the show that dreams can come true. My dream at the beginning I talk about is making a square bubble, and then they witness the process that I go through to do that. And then the resolution, the aha was it was possible and I did it because I modeled the things that I've shared.
I love it. And attending your show, it was a truly magical experience.
Thank
It
you.
was, I was surprised. I was delighted. I think the thing that struck me the most was the delight in the children experiencing the show, but also the adults, because you're reminding me of, I think you know this about me. I'm a certified laughter instructor. I will do these laughter circles for adults. But when I first got started back in 2007, I guess it was, I practiced with my kids. And back then, my kids would have been like 8 or 9, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And I remember them looking at me about halfway through you know, the outline, and they're like, "What is wrong with you adults that you have to do this? Like, how did we get to a place where we forgot to laugh, or that laughter wasn't okay, or forgetting our sense of wonder or magic?" And what I witness in your show is that those things get to come up again, get to be
Yeah.
surfacing again. And someone has the permission to get up on stage and have that experience themselves.
That's an interesting take. You're right. It is a form of permission because it's so out of the ordinary. You leave ordinary reality. For me, it feels very ritualistic. I mean, it's not stated that way or anything like that. I have people, I've had grown-ups that come up and basically echo what you were saying about how they got it on two levels, right? Like they enjoyed watching the kids enjoying the show, and then it also, awakens something within them. So I think it gives us permission. It's like as an adult enjoying going to like say Pixar movies, right? There's all this depth and pathos, and they're really touching movies in my opinion. And taking my kids to see it is like giving myself permission to enter that world again.
Right. And I think it's interesting the fact that we we almost need children with us in order to have permission to go see a show like that.
Right. Yeah, I've joked about that sometimes, using that idea within my show, talking about like, are there any grown-ups here that are here on their own? And sometimes they are, right? It's cases where they've either heard about the show or they've seen the show before, and they want another taste of that feeling again.
It makes me wonder how you see this, I'll call it a dilemma, this
Mhm.
dilemma of forgetting our innocence and our joy and our wonder. What is it that you've noticed over the years? I'm assuming that that's part of your inspiration is to wake that up. But what is it
Yeah.
that you've seen on your path that speaks to that?
Well, my path to this show, it comes from the darkest part of my life. I was in the lowest point years ago. I had gone through a horrible divorce. I had lost everything, my job, my home, my marriage, and I was brought to my knees. It was the proverbial dark night of the soul. I was in really bad shape, and that's sort of my entry into self-help and men's work and 12-step work. Like what I realized is I've tried my best and this is where I ended up. So something has to change. And so as I was healing and really like diving in to all these aspects of uh, putting myself back together again after this huge breakdown, um, it was during that period that certain things started happening, like my origin story. And I've shared this sometimes right within my show. I was working years ago in special education and was asked to work this summer school program with the preschoolers. And it was in that program that I met a child on the autism spectrum for the first time. And I was completely captivated. I've always been sort of like the Pied Piper, the child magnet, like kids just gravitate towards me. And I think that's part of why my show works so well. Like I'm doing something I'm already hardwired to do on some level. But this child, I was just so curious because I had never met anybody on the spectrum and was fascinated how he could come into class every day and leave at the end of the day without ever having interacted with any of us, the other
Mm.
kids, the teachers in the room. And one day I had this incredible experience. I was asked to organize this shelf full of games and toys and puzzles. And as I was doing it, I looked up and I noticed there was a bottle of bubbles. And my inner child rose to the surface. I felt this joy. And so without even thinking, I reached up for the bubbles. And then as soon as I had it, like I felt it in my hand, reality settled in. And I thought, oh my God, here I am, a grown man about to play with these bubbles. And I felt a little embarrassed. And then I realized, no, I'm still going to do it. Like that urge was stronger than the doubt or the feeling of judgment or any fear that I felt about what the other teachers might think. I pulled the bottle down and I realized I'm still going to blow the bubbles, but I don't want anybody to see me do it. I don't want to be witnessed doing this. And so I turned away from the room and I opened it up, and sure enough, the little wand was in there, and I pulled it out and I just blew a bubble for my own enjoyment.
Mm.
And then I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I'm busted. Somebody has caught me doing this. And so I turn around, and it's not one of the teachers, it's this boy. He broke routine, which I've come to learn this is remarkable in itself, right? He broke his usual routine to come over to see what I was doing with these bubbles. And I looked up and the teacher was watching from across the room, sitting at her desk with this expression like, "My God." And I mimed back, "What do I do?" And she mimed back, "I don't know." And
Wow.
all I could think to do was continue to blow bubbles for him. Like I didn't know any tricks or anything back there with bubbles. It was just I could make a bubble. And so I blew bubble after bubble for this little boy. And I actually got to see his eyes for the first time because he would follow that bubble wand. And so I could raise it up until I could see his eyes. In other words, he wasn't making eye contact with me, but I could see him for the first time like that.
Right.
And afterward, all I could wonder was what else could I have done with the bubbles to lengthen the period of time that he allowed me into his world like that?
Mm-hmm.
And answering that question has turned into a full-time calling. I say at the beginning of my performances, you never know when a moment might change your life forever.
Mm-hmm.
That's the moment that I'm referencing inward when I say that.
I love that story. I mean, that's just so. I mean, it makes me go in so many different directions, right? Like, it makes me think of our purpose and how our purpose is
Yes.
usually connected to the pain that we've had to go through. And I want to ask you, it's like, can you remember a time as a child when you used to have that kind of connection and those feelings? Like, did you have a full circle moment as you blew that bubble and saw the bubbles on the shelf? Or did it just evolve?
I don't know if that was the point where I felt the full circle. I did feel one. For me, the full circle came, like the reason I used that example of the origin story is, let's see, how do I put this? As I said, I was in a really, it was like the worst point in my life, right? The lowest
Yeah,
point in my life. And that's when this experience happened. And so as I was healing, I was working on these bubbles. I was trying to answer that question. What else could I do with the bubbles? How could I have used that to lengthen that experience that I had with that boy? Because that put me in a state of wonder
right,
and the teacher in a state of wonder because we were like, he's never done this sort of thing
right,
before. And so, on one hand, I'm reawakening creatively as I'm asking all these questions and I'm trying to figure out what I could do with the bubbles. And it had a background years ago in magic and storytelling. So, those elements kind of rose to the surface. And I was just positively excited about this newfound medium, this something
mm-hmm,
that I could do with these bubbles. And meanwhile, I'm also, attending meetings and I'm doing my 12-step work and I'm healing. And finally, I got to a point where I thought, wow, I want to offer this. I want to do this as like a school assembly or something.
sure,
And a fellow teacher, he said, well, I've done some school assemblies and you can't simply do an entertainment show. It has to have an educational component. So the earliest incarnations of Bubble Wonders, I was selling it as a science-based show. Here's why bubbles do this. Here's why this. But when I actually started performing it, that's not what came out. What
right,
came out were all of these things that I was learning about myself, about self-empowerment and self-acceptance and self-love and not giving up and trying and not being afraid, because those were the things that I was living in that moment. And that's what came out of me naturally. And that's where the tipping point was, because those messages connected with these cool bubble tricks. That was some new combination that just it took it to a whole new level, and the show just kind of took off the more that I got out of my way and shared those things. And again, it's like anything, I would do a show and a show and a show, and I would quickly learn I had to rephrase something in a certain way because I wasn't getting the response I was expecting, or I would say something in a way that it would derail the show a little bit because of the way the kids would respond to a question or something like that. And so the kids have taught me over the years how to fine tune the show. And so, things that happened in earlier shows, trying to create something and the bubble pops and they got such a huge reaction. The kids laughed. And then I laughed because they were laughing and they saw me and I think they were expecting me to be upset. And I
right,
didn't. I didn't respond with I wasn't upset. I was laughing along with them. I was laughing at it and thinking it's just a bubble, right? And I let it go. And now that's still in the show. Now it's planned, right? Because gives me an entry into another one of these little lessons.
Hmm.
Um, and so the whole show was kind of evolved like that based on the reactions that I got or whatever I might be currently experiencing in my present life. Those are the things that color the current version of the show. It very much is a case of what's in the show is partially coming from where I am in my own life personally.
And there's so many lessons that can come from a show like yours, like
Hmm.
right down to being okay with making mistakes,
Yep.
not taking things so seriously. I mean,
Hmm.
the list must go on and on and on.
And then just to circle back around to what you were asking about, like that full circle experience, that did happen for me, but it was years later. I was hired to speak at a Unity Church teens retreat, and it was held in this camp, Camp Duncan in Ingleside, Illinois. I
Okay.
had gone to that camp when I was a boy. That was where I first saw a magician like live in person for the first time. After I was packing up the show, I realized I'm standing in the very same spot where I saw a magician when I was a boy. That was a huge full circle for me.
Okay.
Like me feeling that kind of wonder, in this case, through someone's magic, like live in person versus like seeing Doug Henning or something on television. This was the
Sure.
first time I saw a live magician and just having that state of wonder. And then years later, with Bubble Wonders at this teen retreat, getting a standing ovation and just being flooded with this, oh my God, like I did it. I flash back to that sense of wonder of seeing this magician, but now I was on the other side of that,
Right.
and it just blew my mind.
It reminds me of a quote that a lot of people, when I share the quote, they don't like it or love it. But it's one of these quotes that it just is so true. And it's very simple, really. It's the future creates the present. And the
Mhm.
thing about that quote is that it speaks to the moment you had on that stage, that full circle moment.
Mhm.
It's only in that future moment that we understand why the present had to be the way it was.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of the hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
I've had that happen with dream work too. I've journaled my dreams for years and years and years, and sometimes, well, a lot of time I didn't understand what the dream meant right away. But the beauty of journaling is that, I could go back and I would have these ahas like, oh, I didn't get it then because the thing hadn't happened yet. So it was
Right.
only, half a year later or a year later, rereading the journal going, my God, that's what it meant, right?
Right.
Because now I was at a place where that thing happened. I mean, literally like prophetic dreams, things like that was just this huge, now I get it. So
Right.
that's what I'm trying to work with right now. Because again, I find myself in a really hard point in my life right at this very moment, navigating a divorce. And that's what I keep telling myself is Bubble Wonders came out of the ashes of a previous marriage and the low point in my life. And so I
Hmm.
keep remember what happened. Like, trust that these moments, it will make sense, right? Like, there's a reason. And while I'm struggling in the moment, I know that down the road, I'm going to be looking back and reflecting and going, of course, hoping that I don't resist the lesson and try to accept it quicker this time because I know what's going to happen on the other end.
And so that makes me wonder, are you seeing any glimmers of like perhaps another layer of Bubble Wonders or an evolution of Bubble Wonders or
Yeah,
an
yeah, very
evolution in how
much
you
so.
work? Yeah.
Very much so. I think part of it for me is chronologically. Like next year will be my 20th anniversary of leaving my job teaching. I took a leap of faith and I left teaching to pursue this dream of performing with bubbles.
Yep.
And I've never looked back. And I'm thinking now that 20 years of doing anything, it's like that 10,000 hours, right? Like I feel
Yeah.
like I have something that I can share from a place of wisdom, right? Like I've lived this experience. And so I just think like it would be the perfect time to write a book. Like I'm thinking about doing some sort of memoir. And I know that you and some of the guys from the group came out when I started getting into theater recently
Yes.
and saw another aspect of it. So anything that I would write will eventually also become a theatrical memoir, like a one-man show where I basically tell stories like I'm telling you right now, but also
Mm-hmm.
doing some of the bubble stuff where you bringing in aspects of storytelling or magic or mentalism to again, just like with Bubble Wonders, use these effects so that I can create in the audience so they can feel on some level what I felt like in those moments. You know, Bubble
Right.
Wonders, it's that sense of wonder and to be able to give people a taste of these mystical experiences by bringing in some elements of magic and theater and things like that. I just think that that'd be great. And then years ago, I tried to figure out how could I teach people to do what I'm doing? Maybe not making bubbles, but using the framework of how I made the bubble to help people figure out how to make their personal dream, whatever that might be, come true. And so the analogy was the square bubble, right? Because if you remember, to make the bubble cube, I need to connect six bubbles together. And so I thought, oh,
Mm-hmm.
each bubble could represent some aspect of what we need to have in place for the dream to manifest.
Right.
And I would work on it from time to time over the years, but I was just so busy performing. I never really like dove into it very deep. And then one time I came across this woman named Marsha Weeder. She was Oprah Winfrey's coach, and she had a coaching program that she called Dream Coaching, sort of like life coaching or business coaching, but specifically with helping people make dreams, personal dreams come true. And I thought, well,
Okay.
why reinvent the wheel? Somebody's figured this out. She'd been doing this for years. And now she was training other people to do it. And I thought, well, I'm not going to try to figure this out on my own. I'm just going to become a dream coach. Like she has a system ready to go. I can plug it in when I make it personal, when I do it. You know, I reference the bubbles and things like that to give it my own personal twist on it. And so I did. Like I took a few different certification workshops through her to become a certified dream coach. And I thought, but the same thing, like I had the certification, I knew what to do, but I was so busy going out performing Bubble Wonders that it never went anywhere until the pandemic. In a heartbeat, all of my performing dried up because no one could meet live for any reason.
Right.
So all my performance is gone. And then that's what came to me is, oh, what about coaching? I could do dream coaching online. I don't have to be face to face with a person. And so on a whim, I went outside and I was talking on Facebook Live about how I was going to do this. And if you were interested at all, like, reach out to me and we'll do this together. I wasn't going to charge anything. It was sort of like my way to give back. And it was a way for me to give this a trial run, like practice this. Can I do this? Will this be effective? Will people be interested in this? So I did. I took a group of people through the dream coaching process online, weekly calls, and I had a blast. I loved it. It was like this. I mean, think about doing this, with a very specific focus on this 12-step process for making your dream come true and having other people being excited. And then I got all these wonderful testimonials and feedback and quotes from people, all that I kind of put on the back burner for the raw materials of trying to launch some sort of dream coaching program. And so that's another thing that's been niggling in the background, like, do you have to do something with that? You had so much fun doing that. I think you'd be really good at that. And then, you get life sends you messages like that too, right? People keep saying, oh, like, I really like your voice. I could listen to your voice forever. So, okay. So part of it is just showing up and listening when you start getting the same messages over and over again. And then there's timing, right? So now I
Sure.
feel like at this 20-year mark feels like a good place to do that.
Yes, it totally does. And just hearing you talk about it is quite inspiring. Like I love the energy that you have around it, and I really hope that you do follow that and put some energy towards it.
Yeah, I'm excited. Right before we jumped on the call, I looked up and I found this. It's a pink heart, like construction paper heart. And I'm almost positive this came from some sort of Valentine's Day seminar at the Unity of Chicago.
Okay.
I, w- I would be able to pinpoint the year if I go back through my journals, but I hadn't written that on here. But this was prior to Bubble Wonders taking off, and I don't remember the exact instructions, but what's written on here in my handwriting is I am making a prosperous and well respected career of entertaining and educating children and young at heart adults using magic, bubbleology, juggling, and to share spiritual truths and inspire.
Wow.
And so this is another like full circle thing. I remember coming across this recently in an old journal or something. I'm like, oh my God, here was the setting of the intention, and it has come to pass. It has happened. I love that sort of thing.
I love it. So I want to go back to something you said.
Please.
You talked about your journey of self-acceptance and self-love through the bubble shows and through what you were sharing. Speak about that because I feel like this topic of self-love and self-acceptance is it's a bit of a mystery in some ways.
Mhm.
What did you discover? What did you learn about those two things?
Well, for me, part of it was just accepting that this is who I am. This is the way that I'm hardwired, where culture would say those things aren't very masculine. Real men don't play with bubbles, you know? So it was overcoming a lot of conditioning. And yeah, early on when I was telling people that at one point I had fought, not fought, but I had really worked hard to apply for this master's program to become a special ed teacher. And I actually was awarded one of the scholarships. And then when it came time to sign on the dotted line, I had a panic attack. And I
Wow.
realized I cannot do this. As noble as it was, and how grateful I was that I was going to get this free scholarship to become a teacher, to receive a master's. But I realized that wasn't where I was supposed to be. But so even that, right? Like my thought was, oh my God, how am I going to explain that to my family? They're going to think I'm nuts that I gave that up to pursue a career playing with bubbles.
Right.
I still have family members that don't get it, right? People pay you money. You've traveled to 10 different countries. They pay you to come to their country and play with bubbles. They don't get it. And so that self acceptance, that self love was just realizing this is what makes me feel good. Like, keep doing the things that I know that I can do, that I've come here to do, that are the natural. And like I said before, about sort of being like that child magnet, right? I come in hardwired to do this sort of thing. I
Hmm.
just had another example of it happening, but one example I shared with an audience member after the show recently was about that sort of thing. She worked in special ed too, and I said, "Well, I had this moment where I was taking a couple of my grade school kids on a field trip to go visit the classroom in the school they were going to be in the next year, like they were going up a grade level. And
Hmm.
so to kind of acclimate them to what next year was going to bring, I took them to this other school to sit in this other classroom for a while and meet their future teacher and some of the students that would be there the next year. And so I had never been to the school. I'd never been to this classroom. I didn't know any of these people, but they got us all situated. I was sitting there and the teacher was talking about something. I honestly don't remember what at this point. And then this boy in her classroom, it was somebody else on the spectrum, got up from his seat, walked across the room, like right past the teacher as she was talking. He crossed the room and he came and he sat in my lap. And she just stopped. She was just frozen with this look on her face like, what just happened? And then somebody else leaned over and said, he's never done anything like that before. And so those were like the little nudges that I needed, right? Like they were the signs that, yeah, do this. Don't let the opinions or what you think somebody else might think about what you're doing affect you. What's the beautiful line? What other people think of me,
None of your
what other
business.
people, yeah, yeah, exactly. What people think of me is none of my business, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't control it and whatever. And so those are sort of those moments of self-love and self-acceptance. It's just all of that, like
Hmm.
performing is a way for me to access all of those things and be grateful for them. You know, being paid to do something that I love to do. I feel like, talk about like the 1%. I think that that's another kind of 1%. Being able to do the thing that you're really good at, to do that for a career, a calling, which is why that message of anything is possible feels so potent for me, is because I've lived it. It's not theoretical. It's not this Pollyannish, unrealistic optimism. I feel like I can only share those messages because I've walked that path, because I
Hmm.
know that journey intimately.
And this self acceptance and self love comes back to where you had that moment, you were about to blow that bubble, and a little bit of doubt, and then you did it anyway.
Yeah,
To me, that's
exactly.
just so profound, right? Because how many of us are scared to blow that bubble? How many of us
Mhm.
wouldn't even open or bring it down off the shelf? We might
Yeah,
have the thought. And so really that's what you're speaking about. It's that simple and that complicated.
yeah, yeah. What's the thing? Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Hmm.
Like, because I think there's something about that impulse. The fact that I felt that meant that it was something I was supposed to do. I didn't
Yeah.
have to understand why. I just had to not be concerned. Like I said, I was still going to do it. I just didn't want anybody to see me do it.
Right.
Yeah. But then still being witnessed anyway by some of the most spiritually present people in the world. And from my experience, it was these kids that I was working with. So many ways that they've touched my life and taught me lessons without books or without even words, and being able to trust that. But yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. That's a good point. It was that same idea, right? Like feeling it and doing it anyway.
Yeah. I want to segue a little bit into talking about men's work because I feel like there's this piece, like the fear to blow that bubble, the judgment
Yeah.
that might come. I don't think it's only for men. However, given our connection through men's work, it's an interesting piece to talk about. But
Sure.
what is it that you've noticed through your many years? I think many more years than me in terms of your work with men and being involved in men's work. What is it that you've noticed as a theme or a message or I mean, you said that you like to try and invite men up onto the stage
Yeah.
to break that bubble, if you will.
Well, like I said, I'm ecstatic every time an adult comes up. It doesn't really matter to me who it is, because I think in that moment it's the perfect person because they're the one that actually did it. They felt that concern or the
Sure,
hesitation, but they did it anyway. So there's a version of me who I can now encourage, right? And so when it's a man, I feel even more. It feels more personal, right? Because it feels like, okay, here's somebody. I was that guy.
right,
And so again, I bring in that praise piece. One, because I want them to feel as safe and comfortable up there in front of the audience as possible. So I don't make jokes about them, or I don't belittle them or do anything where people would laugh about them or at them, right? That was
sure,
always something really clear from the beginning. I remember seeing different entertainers doing things like that with kids, getting a volunteer up and then making them the butt of a joke or doing something where people were laughing. And I thought, I would cringe. Like that would have scarred me as a child
sure.
to have that happen, right? Like I had the guts to get up there and this is the way you treated me. So when I get a volunteer up, it's very respectful so that I'm again, like it creates that opening, that moment. And so, especially June and July and August, those are really busy months because I've got a lot of library clients and a big part of their budget is spent during the summer to bring kids into these reading programs. And
Sure.
so June is Men's Mental Health Month. When I would get guys up for to be inside the bubble, that was definitely part of it, reinforcing. Or even in July, it was like, okay, well, last month was men's health, but this is a message that shouldn't be talked about just in June. Like this is a message that we could talk about year round. But just again, like affirming, you're a great dad. I saw it. Like sometimes I see it. Like I can sometimes kind of guess who will be most likely to come up and be inside a bubble because of the way that they behave with their kids before a show,
Sure.
right? So just reflecting back, witnessing, I saw you, your kids love you. And thank you for showing us that it's never too late to have a happy childhood. Showing that it's okay for grown-ups to play. And even more importantly, for men to play, because I can then reference myself. Like I know this is true for myself, that
Hmm.
I'm in a better place mentally and physically, emotionally, spiritually, because of my willingness to continue to play, to access that inner child and let it out through play. Originally doing the show and then in parenthood, being able to
Hmm.
to bring that into my relationship with my own kids. So I think that's the primary way that some of those aspects of the men's work, because I don't necessarily talk about men's work during that bit during the show.
Right.
I have had guys come up after the show just to talk about whatever, like, well, that square bubble was really cool. I didn't think you were going to really do that. And then we've had conversations that led into men's work
Hmm.
and things like that, just naturally.
As you were talking, I was having memories come back of being teased as a kid for my ways of being or things that I was interested in or things I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was other boys doing that. Those are the moments that shut down these kinds of things that we're interested in. They shut down the innocence, they shut down the wonder.
Yeah.
And it's so sad to think back of some of those experiences.
Hmm. Well, think
So
about it.
you,
I mean, you hear these examples, right? Like I was told that I couldn't sing when I was a kid, so I never
yeah,
sang again. I was
yeah,
told that my drawing wasn't done right, so I never tried to draw again.
yeah,
So you're talking exactly to what I was talking about, like the self-acceptance, self-love. Yeah, I like poetry. Yeah, I have this creative side, right? I do draw, I do write, I write poetry, I do this. Things that the messaging that I received as a kid is that's things girls do. Boys
right,
don't do that.
right.
But it's like, but this is what I do. I can't change that.
Yeah. There's another memory that's coming up. It's a little bit of a tangent, but I had a friend who was very much into improv, and he actually started a business all about helping to cultivate play in workplaces and
Mm,
using play as a catalyst for communication and many other things. So
yeah.
he and I would often play in public. And so one of the things we would do from time to time is we'd be in an elevator and one or the other, one of us would be like, hey, let's play hide and seek. And most of the people in the elevator were like, look at you like you're crazy, right? And around that same time, I lived in a building with an elevator, and my two young kids, we were in the elevator, and I looked at my kids and I said, hey, let's play hide and seek. And without missing a beat, they took their coats, they put them over their head, and they were hiding, right? It's so simple. And
Oh, I
yet,
love it.
for adults, it's like we might not think of that.
Yeah,
So that imagining what's possible, it's like, I can't play hide and seek. There's nowhere to hide.
exactly.
Children just remind us of that. I was just reminded of that story as you were speaking because it was such a gift to have that experience with my kids that during that
I
time.
I
Yeah.
love that. And that's what I meant earlier when I said they already live in that
Hmm.
experience, right? It's we have to come to them. That's how I described it when this child on the spectrum came over to see the bubbles. that impulse that was born in me was, what else could I have done to lengthen that
Yes.
period of time that he allowed me in?
Yes.
It's that same idea, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
did you have any follow-up experiences with him?
Uh, yeah, it was interesting. That was sort of like the doorway in, not bubble related, but I'll give you two examples. One was, again, like he had certain routines. He played with certain toys every day. It was like clockwork. And one thing he loved was this little toy train set. And he would pull it out and he would lay on the floor, and I would lay on the floor and just kind of watch him play with these trains. And I realized after a while, after days of witnessing this ritual over and over again, oh wow, like he has a very specific order to how these trains are set down on the track. And my guess is, like some of them, they get into a subject that they love, whether it's dinosaurs or lizards or whatever, and then they know everything about that, right? They do these deep dives into these subjects that they really love. So my thought was, oh, he probably knows how a train would actually be set up, like what cars would follow what cars, and etc. And so one day, sitting there, laying down on the floor, watching him do this, he was putting one car and connecting it to the next car, and just I don't know what made me do it, but I reached over and grabbed a car and connected it to the train. And his
Okay.
hand paused in his movement. And then he reached over and he took the car off the train and set it down. But then he reached over and he picked up what, in his opinion, was the correct car, and he gave it to me to connect it.
Oh wow, beautiful.
Hmm. So I wasn't being denied or told silently, don't screw around with my train. It was an invitation, was here's the right one. You can connect this one.
Hmm.
And it was just like I
So
felt,
he confirmed and invited you in.
yeah,
Yeah.
completely wordless. And again, that first reaction I had was, oh no, like, I've been denied, or I've done something wrong, or I made a mistake, or, he's not accepting me. But he was. I had to wait a beat longer.
Right.
And then the second experience that comes up when I think about that was, it was really painful to see him be dropped off in the morning. His mom would literally, kind of have to pry him off her arm. And then we would close the door of the classroom and she would run back out to her car, and he would run across the room and he would climb up this bookshelf by the window, and he could stand on it to look out the window and watch her drive away. And the teacher was really upset by this because she was afraid that he was going to fall off this bookshelf, because he climbed up this thing to be able to get high enough to the window. And so I thought about it, and the next day, what I did is, when it happened again, because it happened every day, I just made sure there was a little step stool there, and I just slid it into place right as he got to the window so that he could safely do what he needed to do, but in a safe way. And the teacher just saw that, and she's like smiled and gave me the okay sign, like, well done. You figured it out. You made it safe. He was able to do what he wanted, but he did it in a way that we felt was safe for him to do it.
Those two stories remind me of one of the things I say the most is we have to go slow to go fast. Like we're moving so
Mhm.
fast through the world. And what I love about those two stories is that you slowed down and met him where he was at so that you could observe these subtleties that you wouldn't have noticed if you were trying to go so fast. And so that piece around like observing and listening, deep
Yeah,
listening,
yeah, big
that's
time.
great. Love it.
Thank you. Thank you for understanding that and seeing that and reflecting that back, because that's exactly what it was. Being able to
Yeah.
slow down and enter his world, and what could I do,
Yeah.
to strengthen that connection.
So we're unfortunately at a part where we need to wrap up. We could have easily continued to keep talking. But before we wrap up, I want to ask you a closing question.
Sure.
If you could leave our listeners with one thought about finding wonder in the ordinary, what would it be?
Wonder feeds our soul. Like, seek it out. And that might come from kids, that might come from something that comes across your feed, but like, follow those things. try to find ways to feel wonder again. It's healing.
I love that. Wonder feeds our soul. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
And for people who want to stay connected or explore more of your work, where's the best place for them to find you?
On my website, Bubble Wonders, and I'm on all the social medias too, and YouTube and all of that stuff. But my website, that's the best way to connect because it has a contact form and you can put in all the details if you're interested, if whether that's something for kids like a school assembly, Girl Guides, places of worship, or speaking for an adult event. I love all of those things and able to customize something depending on the event.
Excellent. So I just want to say a heartfelt thank you for having you here, for you choosing to come on and have this conversation, and for the depth that you brought. It's really been a gift to have this conversation with you.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. And to everyone listening, thank you for tuning in, and a reminder to watch for the first Sacred Sundays episode dropping this Sunday. Bye for now. I lay my head down.
Check out my lovely partner's music, Christina Jessen, at christinajessen.com. And there's also more information on what we're doing. We're doing a land project up here, traditional land development with a community intention. And if you're interested in any of the retreats that we're a part of and part of organizing, you can find all that information at sacredvillagepodcast.com. Have a wonderful day.
Floating down and down like a feather, I floated down and down, and I floated down and down like a feather.